My name is Paul, and I've always considered myself a lucky man. At 42, I have a wonderful wife named Susan and a beautiful daughter, Alexa, who is 12 years old. Our life together is a blend of laughter, love, and the occasional chaos that comes with raising a child. From the outside, we appear to be a picture-perfect family, but beneath the surface, the realities of life can sometimes blur that image. Susan is my rock. We met in college, and our bond grew stronger with each passing year. With her warm smile and infectious laughter, she has a way of making the most mundane days feel special. Whether it's a spontaneous movie night on the couch or a weekend hiking trip, Susan has a talent for turning ordinary moments into cherished memories. Her love for our family shines through in everything she does, from cooking our favorite meals to organizing family game nights that often end in playful arguments and uncontrollable laughter. Alexa, our daughter, is the light of our lives. With her father's curiosity and her mother's creativity, she has an adventurous spirit that fills our home with joy. She excels in school, loves playing soccer, and is an aspiring artist. I often find her in the corner of our living room, lost in her world of colors, creating masterpieces that we proudly display on the fridge. The three of us share a palpable bond, built on trust and mutual respect. Our evenings are usually spent around the dinner table, where we talk about our day, share stories, and laugh over inside jokes. These moments are sacred, a time for us to reconnect after busy days filled with work and school. I cherish our family traditions, like Friday movie nights and Sunday brunches, where we sit together, savoring not just the food but the time we have as a family. While our home is filled with love, I believe it is the trust we've built over the years that truly holds us together. Susan and I communicate openly, sharing our thoughts, fears, and dreams. We support each other's goals and ambitions. And I admire her strength and determination. I've always felt that our marriage was built on a solid foundation, one that would withstand the tests of time. In my mind, I could never imagine a scenario that would challenge this bond. I had faith that our love was unbreakable. Little did I know that fate had other plans in store for us. As I reflect on those blissful days, I find comfort in the thought that even in the face of adversity, love and trust have the power to heal. But at that moment, everything felt perfect, and I held on to the hope that it would always remain that way. It was an ordinary Wednesday evening when everything changed. The day had unfolded like any other, with the usual hustle and bustle of family life. I had come home from work, greeted by the smell of Susan's delicious chicken Alfredo wafting through the kitchen. Alexa was in her room, immersed in her homework, while Susan was busy preparing dinner. We shared a few laughs, and I felt that comforting sense of normalcy enveloping us. After dinner, I offered to clean up, wanting to give Susan a break. As I washed the dishes, I noticed her phone sitting on the kitchen counter, its screen illuminated. Normally, I wouldn't pry into her things, but something compelled me to glance at the phone. I told myself it was just a harmless curiosity, a fleeting moment. But as I wiped my hands on a towel, I caught sight of a message notification that made my heart race. The message was from Ben, Susan's high school friend, her classmate who had sat next to her in class. I felt a knot tighten in my stomach as I picked up the phone, unable to resist the pull of curiosity. I opened the messaging app, and what I saw made my blood run cold. The messages between them were casual at first, filled with inside jokes and fond memories. But as I scrolled further, my heart sank. "Can't wait to see you again," one message read. "Just like old times. We should meet up soon." Another message followed, "I've missed you so much. It feels like forever since we last talked." The tone of their conversation shifted from friendly banter to something more intimate, and I could feel my chest tightening with each new revelation. My mind raced, piecing together the implications of those words. I wanted to believe that I was overreacting, that this was just a nostalgic exchange between old friends. But the more I read, the more the nagging doubt took root in my mind. Why were they discussing their meetings in such a secretive manner? Why did Susan feel the need to hide her phone when I was around? I had always trusted her implicitly. But now, that trust felt as fragile as glass. The final message shattered any hope I had left. "I can't stop thinking about you. We need to talk about what happened." My heart raced. What had happened? My mind conjured up images of them together, laughing and sharing secrets, and a wave of betrayal washed over me. How could she do this? How could she betray everything we had built together? Suddenly, the kitchen felt suffocating, and I put the phone back down as if it were on fire. My hands trembled, and I leaned against the counter, struggling to breathe. I needed to confront Susan, to demand answers, but I also feared the fallout of such a confrontation. My heart and mind were locked in a brutal battle. As I replayed the messages in my mind, I felt an unfamiliar anger bubbling inside me. I had always prided myself on being a good husband, but now I felt betrayed and alone. I tried to rationalize the situation, thinking perhaps I had misunderstood, but deep down, I knew there was more to their relationship than just friendship. That night, I lay in bed beside Susan, unable to sleep. I watched her as she slept peacefully, her face illuminated by the soft glow of the moonlight. The contrast of her calmness and the storm raging within me was unbearable. I wanted to reach out to her, to hold her and ask her if everything was okay, but the weight of my discovery held me back. Instead, I turned away, staring into the darkness of our room. The trust I had in her felt shattered, and a sense of dread washed over me. I couldn't shake the feeling that the woman I thought I knew so well was hiding something monumental. At that moment, I realized that my life was about to take a turn I never anticipated. The next few days were a blur of confusion and doubt. I couldn't shake the images of those messages from my mind, nor could I erase the bitter taste of betrayal. Susan and I went through our daily routines as if nothing had changed, but the atmosphere in our home was heavy with unspoken tension. I felt like I was living a lie, pretending everything was fine while my heart was screaming for the truth. I decided I needed to uncover the reality of the situation. I couldn't just confront Susan without evidence. What if I was wrong? What if my suspicions were nothing but the product of my imagination? I needed to be certain, so I devised a plan. Every day, I would wait until Susan left for work, and I would take my time to observe her. I became adept at casual surveillance, tracking her movements without drawing any suspicion. I would follow her to the coffee shop where she often met friends, just to ensure she wasn't meeting Ben. I even asked her about her day-to-day activities, feigning casual interest while keeping an eye on the details of her story. At first, it felt strange to be watching her like this. Susan had always trusted me completely, and here I was, acting like a detective in my own home. I found myself parked outside the coffee shop one afternoon, watching her laugh and chat with her friends. She seemed so happy, and a pang of jealousy mixed with anger shot through me. I wondered if she felt the same way when she was with Ben. I decided to step it up. One evening, after she returned home from a supposed girls' night out, I noticed a strange smell on her clothes. It was a hint of cologne I didn't recognize. It was subtle but there, lingering in the air, and it filled me with a sense of dread. I didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the pieces of the puzzle were slowly starting to come together, forming a picture I desperately didn't want to see. The following week, I went through Susan's things, searching for any clues that could confirm my worst fears. I felt guilt creeping in as I rifled through her items, but I rationalized that it was necessary. I found her planner and flipped through the pages. To my horror, there were several entries with times marked as meetings or appointments that seemed suspiciously vague. I took a photo of the pages with my phone, my heart racing. As the investigation continued, my emotional state became increasingly tumultuous. Each new piece of evidence added another layer of pain, and the anger I felt morphed into an all-consuming fire. I couldn't believe the woman I had shared my life with was capable of such betrayal. Memories of our life together flashed before my eyes, the laughter, the shared dreams, the promises we made to each other. How could she jeopardize it all for a fleeting affair with Ben? In the depths of my mind, I began questioning everything about our relationship. Had our love been genuine? Or was it just a facade? The anger I felt towards Susan shifted to self-doubt. Had I failed as a husband? Was I not enough for her? The questions haunted me at night, keeping me awake while Susan slept soundly beside me. I felt a wave of sadness wash over me as I realized that the trust we had built over the years was crumbling before my eyes. With each passing day, I battled with my emotions. I wanted to confront Susan, to demand answers, but fear held me back. I wasn't sure I was ready to hear the truth. I wrestled with the conflicting desires of wanting to protect my family and needing to uncover the truth. The more I found out, the more I felt like a stranger in my own life. I began to isolate myself, withdrawing from Susan and Alexa. I could no longer participate in our family activities with the same enthusiasm. The joy that once filled our home felt muted, overshadowed by the weight of my discoveries. I wanted to confide in a friend, someone who could help me make sense of everything. But I couldn't bring myself to share my pain. What would I even say? I think my wife is cheating on me? It felt too raw, too vulnerable. As the investigation deepened, I realized I was walking a fine line between seeking the truth and destroying my family. I yearned for closure, but at what cost? Each day became a struggle as I battled with the conflicting emotions of love, betrayal, and heartbreak. I felt as if I were standing at the edge of a cliff, uncertain whether to leap into the abyss of truth or retreat to the safety of ignorance. The air in our house felt electric, charged with the tension of unspoken words and hidden truths. I had reached a breaking point. I could no longer carry the burden of suspicion alone. I needed answers, and I needed them now. The evidence I had collected swirled in my mind, fueling a storm of anger and betrayal. I knew the conversation ahead would be difficult, but I had to confront Susan about what I had discovered. That evening, after dinner, I could feel my heart pounding in my chest. Susan was tidying up the kitchen, humming softly to herself. The sound of her voice was like a knife twisting in my gut, a reminder of the intimacy we had shared and the distance that now lay between us. I took a deep breath, summoning the courage I needed. "Susan, we need to talk," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. She turned, a hint of confusion flickering across her face. "Is everything okay, Paul? You seem serious." "Not really. I found some messages on your phone, and I think it's time we addressed them," I said, trying to keep my tone measured despite the turmoil inside me. Her expression shifted, the lightheartedness evaporating as she stepped back, her eyes widening. "Messages? What are you talking about?" I felt the anger rise within me, but I forced myself to stay calm. "You know exactly what I mean, Susan. Messages between you and Ben. Don't try to deny it." A flicker of panic crossed her face, but she quickly masked it with a facade of composure. "Paul, I can explain. It's not what you think. Then explain it to me," I demanded, my frustration boiling over. "Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been meeting him, spending time with him behind my back. I thought we had something real. How could you do this to us?" Her voice trembled slightly as she began to speak. "I swear, it's not like that. Ben is just an old friend. We've been talking about old times and reminiscing, but that's it. I never meant for you to see those messages. They were just harmless chats." "Harmless chats?" I echoed, disbelief flooding my words. "You called telling him you miss him and can't wait to see him again harmless? You're putting our entire family at risk for what, nostalgia? You're just going to brush this off?" She took a step closer, her eyes pleading. "I never wanted you to find out like this, Paul. I was just feeling overwhelmed with everything, work, life, being a mom. Talking to Ben was a way to escape for a moment. It didn't mean anything. You have to believe me." Her justifications felt weak, like a flimsy shield against the storm of accusations I was throwing her way. "But you hid it from me. You lied to my face every day. If it didn't mean anything, why not just tell me? Why be secretive about it?" Susan's voice wavered as she continued to defend herself. "I didn't want to hurt you. I thought if I kept it to myself, it would be fine. I never meant for it to escalate. It was just conversation, I swear. I love you, Paul. You had to understand that." I could see the tears welling up in her eyes, and for a moment, I felt a flicker of empathy. But the pain of betrayal overshadowed any sympathy I had. "Love? If you loved me, you wouldn't be sneaking around with someone else. You wouldn't be sending messages like that to a man who was just a friend. This isn't just a harmless chat, Susan. This is deceit. I'm sorry. I never wanted to hurt you," she pleaded, her voice cracking. "I just got caught up in the past, and I didn't know how to handle it." I shook my head, my chest tightening as I tried to process everything she was saying. "You're telling me that an old friend from high school suddenly became someone you confide in, someone you miss? This is not just a casual friendship, Susan. This is a betrayal of our marriage, of everything we've built together." As I spoke, I could see the realization dawning on her. She knew I was right, yet she fought to hold on to her justifications. "I never wanted to betray you. I swear. Can't you see that?" But I was done with excuses. The hurt and anger had boiled over, and now I felt a surge of clarity. "You need to understand that trust is everything in a relationship. And right now, I don't know if I can trust you anymore. You've shattered that trust with your actions." The silence that followed felt heavy, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. I could see the pain in her eyes, but my own heart was too raw to care. I felt lost, like I was standing at the edge of an abyss, staring into darkness. Susan reached out to touch my arm, but I flinched away, unable to let her comfort me. "I need time to think," I finally said, my voice barely above a whisper. The weight of my words hung in the air like a dark cloud, foreboding and ominous. As I turned away from her, I felt a part of my heart break, knowing that this confrontation had changed everything between us. I walked away, leaving Susan standing there, tears streaming down her face, as I grappled with the reality that the woman I loved had betrayed me in the most profound way imaginable. In the days following the confrontation, I found myself in a haze of conflicting emotions. Anger, betrayal, and heartbreak coursed through my veins like a relentless tide. I had tried to process everything Susan had said, but the pain of her betrayal clung to me, refusing to let go. I could no longer sit back and pretend everything was fine. I needed to take action. The idea of revenge began to take root in my mind, growing from a whisper into a roar. Susan had betrayed our marriage, and I felt an overwhelming urge to expose her for what she had done. I could no longer protect her secrets, it was time for the truth to come out. I had always believed in honesty, and it was clear that Susan had taken advantage of my trust. It was around this time that my birthday approached, and it struck me like a lightning bolt. What better occasion to unveil her betrayal than at a celebration where all our friends and family would be gathered? The thought of standing before everyone I cared about, laying bare the truth of Susan's infidelity, filled me with a sense of satisfaction. I could finally reclaim my power, and I wouldn't be a victim of her deceit any longer. I sat down with a pen and paper, my heart racing as I began to create a list of everyone I wanted to inform. Friends, family, acquaintances, no one would be left in the dark. Each name brought back memories, laughter, and shared moments, and it felt surreal to think that these people, who had witnessed the love between Susan and me, would soon know the truth behind the facade. First on the list was Susan's best friend, Michelle. I knew she would be devastated by the news, but she had a right to know. Michelle had always been a confidant, a pillar of support in our lives, and I imagined the look of disbelief on her face when I shared the truth. Next, I added Susan's sister, Lisa, who had always admired our relationship. I could picture her reaction, the shock, the anger, and the confusion. I thought about our mutual friends, the couples we had spent countless weekends with, sharing meals and laughter. They deserved to hear my side of the story, to understand the truth behind what Susan had done. I added each name methodically, my resolve strengthening with every addition. This was no longer just about revenge, it was about reclaiming my dignity and ensuring that I wouldn't be painted as the villain in this story. As I completed the list, a sense of clarity washed over me. I would confront Susan publicly, holding her accountable for her actions in front of those who had witnessed our marriage. I envisioned the evening, a casual gathering that would start with laughter and lighthearted banter, only to take a dark turn when I revealed the truth. The shockwaves would ripple through the crowd, and I would finally feel the weight lift off my shoulders. But a part of me still hesitated. I knew this wasn't just about revenge, it would have lasting consequences, affecting not just Susan but our daughter, Alexa. She would bear the brunt of the fallout from this public revelation. And the thought of her being caught in the crossfire filled me with dread. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was crossing a line, that I was willing to risk everything for the sake of my pride and hurt. As the days progressed, I found myself oscillating between the desire for revenge and the worry of what it would mean for my family. I knew that no matter how justified I felt, exposing Susan in such a way would fracture our family dynamic irreparably. I thought about Alexa and the way she would view both of us after this. Would she understand why I had done it? Would she resent me for making her mother the villain? Despite these thoughts swirling in my mind, the anger continued to fuel my resolve. Susan had made her choice, and now I would make mine. I decided to move forward with my plan. It was my birthday, after all, a day meant for celebration and joy. I would reclaim that day and turn it into a moment of empowerment. I began preparing what I would say, rehearsing the words in my mind until they felt like a script. I would share the truth without flinching, without hesitation. I have something important to share, I would say, my voice steady. Susan has betrayed our marriage, and I want all of you to know the truth. The anticipation built inside me as the day approached. I felt like a dam ready to burst, holding back the flood of emotions I had kept hidden for too long. I imagined the looks on their faces, the shock, the gasps, and the murmurs of disbelief. It was exhilarating and terrifying all at once. As the day drew nearer, I realized that this was not just a plan for revenge, it was a pivotal moment in my life. I was no longer the man who would silently suffer through betrayal. I was taking control, and with that realization came a sense of empowerment I hadn't felt in days. I would stand tall, unyielding, and ready to face whatever consequences lay ahead. My heart raced with anticipation and fear, but I knew I had to follow through. It was time to unveil the truth, and I was determined to make sure that Susan's actions did not go unpunished. The stage was set, and I was ready to claim my voice. The day of my birthday arrived, and I felt a whirlwind of emotions battling within me. The house was filled with laughter, balloons, and the smell of cake, but beneath the festive atmosphere, a storm was brewing. I had invited our closest friends and family, and now it was time to face the truth. I felt a mixture of dread and exhilaration as I prepared to unveil the secret that had been tearing me apart. As the guests arrived, I put on a brave face, mingling with everyone and exchanging pleasantries and birthday wishes. My heart raced with each passing moment. I knew I couldn't delay the inevitable. After the initial chaos of greetings settled down, I gathered everyone in the living room. My friends and family, who had witnessed our life together, looked at me with curiosity and concern. I could see the excitement in their eyes, unaware of the revelation I was about to share. "Thank you all for coming," I began, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. "It means a lot to me to celebrate this day with all of you." I paused, searching their faces for support, and then continued, "But there's something important I need to share, something you all deserve to know." The room fell silent, and a sense of tension filled the air. I glanced at Susan, who stood off to the side, her expression a mix of confusion and fear. It was time to unmask the truth. "I discovered that my wife, Susan, has been cheating on me," I declared, my voice unwavering. "For months now, she has been involved with her high school friend, Ben. They've been meeting and exchanging messages behind my back." A collective gasp rippled through the room. Faces turned to Susan, seeking her reaction, her denial. She opened her mouth to speak, but the words caught in her throat. I could see the color drain from her face as the realization of what was happening sunk in. "Paul, please," she finally managed, her voice shaky. "This isn't what it seems." But I couldn't let her deflect the truth. "What it seems is that you've betrayed our marriage and our family for the sake of an old fling," I shot back, my anger boiling over. "You've destroyed the trust we built over years, and I want everyone to understand the gravity of what you've done." The reactions of our friends varied. Some looked shocked, their mouths agape in disbelief. Others exchanged whispers, trying to process the information. Michelle, Susan's best friend, stood frozen in place, her eyes darting between Susan and me, trying to grasp the situation. Lisa, Susan's sister, looked hurt, her expression a mixture of confusion and disbelief. "I can't believe this," Michelle finally said, her voice trembling. "Susan, is this true? How could you do this to Paul? To your family?" Susan's voice trembled as she attempted to defend herself. "It was just a mistake. I didn't mean for it to happen. Ben was just someone I talked to during a rough time. It didn't mean anything." "Does it matter if it didn't mean anything?" I interjected, my frustration boiling over. "The fact is, you chose to hide this from me. You chose to betray my trust. You've not only hurt me but also our daughter, Alexa. How could you do this?" As I continued to expose the truth, I felt a strange sense of liberation. It was cathartic to let the words spill out, to lay bare the hurt and betrayal that had consumed me for so long. Yet, as I spoke, I could see the devastation wash over Susan's face. This was not just about revenge, it was about unveiling the reality of our fractured marriage. The atmosphere in the room shifted from shock to disbelief. Some guests began to leave, unable to process what they had just heard. Others remained, their expressions a mix of sympathy and condemnation. I could feel the weight of their gazes, judging both Susan and me, but at that moment, I didn't care. I had finally spoken my truth. In the aftermath of the revelation, the room was heavy with tension. Susan stood there, her face pale, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was no longer the confident woman I had married. She was a shell of herself, exposed and vulnerable. As the shock wore off, the consequences of her actions began to unfold. The whispers grew louder as our friends processed the betrayal. Michelle was visibly upset, her loyalty torn between her friend and the truth. Lisa looked at Susan with disappointment, unable to comprehend how her sister could betray her family so profoundly. The judgment in their eyes was palpable, and I knew that Susan's reputation was crumbling before my eyes. I felt a strange mix of relief and sadness wash over me. The truth was out, but the cost was immense. I had exposed the betrayal, but in doing so, I had shattered our family. I could see the pain etched in Susan's features, and a part of me ached for the love we once shared. The laughter and joy we had built over the years felt like a distant memory, now overshadowed by the betrayal that had unfolded. As the party dwindled, I caught glimpses of our friends as they gathered in small groups, discussing what had just happened. I could hear snippets of conversation, shock, disbelief, and a fair share of judgment directed towards Susan. She had become the focal point of their disdain, and I couldn't help but feel a sense of vindication. She had chosen to betray me, and now she was facing the consequences. But even as I felt a sense of empowerment, a deep sadness settled in my chest. The reality of our situation crashed over me like a wave, threatening to pull me under. I had unleashed a storm, and there was no going back. Susan's reputation, once pristine, was now tarnished. I couldn't help but wonder how our daughter, Alexa, would perceive all of this. Would she understand why I had done it? Would she hate me for what I had exposed? As the night wore on, I found myself alone in a corner, watching the chaos unfold. Guests began to leave, some offering half-hearted condolences, others avoiding eye contact altogether. I felt a void growing within me, a profound emptiness that accompanied the realization of what had been lost. In the days that followed, the fallout from that night was swift. Susan faced judgment from friends and family, her social circles shrinking as whispers of her betrayal circulated. I felt a sense of relief knowing that she was experiencing the consequences of her actions, yet I also felt a heavy burden of guilt. I had played a part in this destruction, and it weighed heavily on my conscience. The aftermath of the revelation brought deep reflection. My heart ached for the family we had built together. Despite the hurt and anger, I still loved Susan in some way. The memories of our laughter, our shared dreams, and our hopes for the future haunted me. I had never imagined that my birthday would turn into a catalyst for destruction, ripping apart the fabric of our family. As I looked at the space where laughter once filled the air, I realized that my actions had irrevocably changed our lives. I had sought revenge, yet I found myself standing amidst the ruins of what was once a loving family. The path forward felt uncertain, shrouded in sadness and loss. I had exposed the truth, but at what cost? I had hoped for liberation, but what I found was a profound grief for the family we once were. In the days following the public revelation of Susan's betrayal, a sense of emptiness enveloped our home. The echoes of laughter that once filled the rooms were replaced with an uncomfortable silence, and I felt the weight of my new reality pressing down on me. I had fought for my dignity and exposed the truth, but the aftermath was far from what I had envisioned. My thoughts constantly returned to our daughter, Alexa. She was the innocent bystander in this storm of chaos, and I realized that it was my responsibility to guide her through this tumultuous time. I knew that I needed to step up and take an active role in her life. Despite my emotional turmoil, I understood that Alexa needed stability and support more than ever. I had always envisioned being a role model for her, a figure she could look up to. And now, more than ever, I had to embody those values. I wanted to instill in her the importance of trust, loyalty, and the consequences of choices. One evening, after dinner, I noticed Alexa sitting alone in her room, her head buried in her hands. The sight pierced my heart. She was only 12 years old, too young to shoulder the weight of adult problems. I took a deep breath and knocked on her door. "Hey, sweetheart, can I come in?" "Sure, Dad," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I stepped inside and found her on her bed, surrounded by her books and a half-finished drawing. I could see the remnants of tears on her cheeks, and my heart ached for her. "Do you want to talk?" I asked gently, sitting down beside her. She shrugged, avoiding my gaze. I reached for her hand, intertwining my fingers with hers. "I know things have been really tough lately, and I just want you to know that I'm here for you. You can talk to me about anything." After a moment of silence, she finally looked up. Her eyes filled with sadness. "Why did Mom do it, Dad? Why did she hurt you like that?" Her question hit me hard, and I struggled to find the right words. I wanted to shield her from the ugliness of adult relationships but also felt a duty to be honest. Sometimes, people make choices that hurt others. It doesn't mean they don't love us, but it does mean they've lost sight of what's important. Do you still love her? She asked, her voice trembling. The question hung heavy in the air. I had loved Susan once, but that love was now tangled with feelings of betrayal and disappointment. I loved the idea of our family and the good times we had, I admitted. But love is complicated, especially when trust is broken. What's important now is how we move forward. As I spoke, I could see her processing my words, and I hoped they would provide some clarity in the confusion she felt. I wanted her to understand that while love is beautiful, it must be built on a foundation of trust and respect. In the weeks that followed, I made a conscious effort to spend more quality time with Alexa. I wanted to be present in her life, to show her that even in difficult times, there is strength in connection and support. We started doing things together, going for walks, watching movies, and having deep conversations. I introduced her to my love for nature, and we began taking hikes on the weekends, exploring trails, and discovering the beauty around us. During these moments, I shared stories about my own experiences with friendship and loyalty. I emphasized the importance of surrounding herself with people who uplift her, and who embody the values of honesty and trust. I wanted her to understand that